Isn't it strange how a tiny ding from your phone can jolt you out of a deep thought, a good book, or even a silent room? You might not realize it, but your brain treats that little sound like a digital doorbell, an alert from the outside world knocking on the gates of your attention. Why does it matter so much? Why does it feel so urgent? Your journey starts right here, at that very moment of interruption. The moment when your phone buzzes, your smartwatch vibrates, or a notification badge lights up like a pixel-sized flare. You might just think, oh, someone texted me, but your brain treats it like more than that. Much more. Let's ease in with a question or two. Have you ever felt a little jolt in your chest when you hear a message tone, even before you know who it's from? Have you ever rushed to check your screen during dinner, thinking it might be something important, only to find a meme from a group chat you forgot you were even in? Your brain, my friend, isn't just being dramatic. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. When your phone delivers a notification, your brain lights up the same way it would if it heard a branch snap in the woods at night. It's activating the amygdala, the tiny almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for detecting threats and new stimuli. This system is ancient, built for survival, and it doesn't really differentiate between a tiger in the bushes and a Slack ping. This is where your orienting response comes in. That's a fancy psychological term for the way your body instinctively turns towards sudden stimuli. You hear a ding, and without thinking, your eyes shift, your muscles prepare, and your thoughts scatter. It's the same reflex that helped early humans survive predators, but now, it's reacting to a Starbucks coupon. One interesting study out of Stanford found that the mere sound of a notification, even without checking it, can degrade your performance on a task. That tiny ping splits your attention, slicing your mental focus like a laser through wet tissue paper. Something unexpected you'll want to know: notifications don't even need to be real to hijack your attention. Just expecting one is enough. The anticipation of a buzz can activate your salience network, a brain system involved in detecting important events. This is why you check your phone even when it's silent. You're not imagining it. You're responding to a predictive loop your brain keeps running. An odd but true fact: there's a growing market for notification design specialists. These are folks hired by tech companies to intentionally create sounds and visuals that are neurologically irresistible. Think of them as audio candy engineers for your brain. If the ding sounds just right, sharp, distinct, novel, your brain treats it like something important, even if it's just a new follower request from a bot. There remains considerable disagreement about whether our brains will ever adapt to this kind of constant digital stimulation. Some researchers believe we're already in the early stages of neuroevolution, with young minds developing differently from previous generations. Others argue the brain simply isn't built to handle this level of constant input and that we're paying the price in fragmented attention spans and increased anxiety. You can probably relate. One moment you're reading something or folding laundry, the next you're 17 stories deep in a notification-triggered TikTok spiral, wondering how you ended up watching a raccoon fold laundry better than you. The brain didn't sign up for this whiplash, but here we are. And it's not just about attention. There's an emotional charge that comes with notifications. A tiny part of you feels wanted, seen, relevant. Every time your phone lights up, there's a flicker of maybe someone needs me. It's connection, validation, curiosity, and even anxiety, all wrapped up in a half-second buzz. Remember that this little ping is a prompt, one designed to hijack your mental processes. You feel it in your chest, your palms, your breathing. It's the start of something. And this feeling, that alertness, that little jolt, is where everything else begins. Because once that doorbell rings, your brain opens the door, and suddenly, you're in a whole new space, pulled away from your present moment into a digitally sculpted one. Before we move on, let's anchor this with a moment of awareness. Just breathe. Picture the last notification you got today. What did it make you feel? Was it important? Did it take you somewhere you meant to go, or somewhere you didn't? Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together. And now, as your thoughts settle, let's follow that digital ping deeper, into the chemistry of pleasure itself. So you've just felt the ping. The doorbell rang, and your brain opened the door. But what comes next? That's where things get even more interesting. Because the moment your brain registers a notification, it doesn't just stop at attention. No, it goes hunting for something sweeter. You're about to meet the molecule that makes social media feel like magic, dopamine. Now, dopamine isn't pleasure itself, it's the chemical of anticipation, of motivation. It's the neurological push that whispers, just one more time. One more check. One more scroll. One more click. And every single time your phone lights up with a notification, your brain fires a tiny pulse of it, like a reward teaser trailer playing in your head. Here's how it works. You hear that ping, and your brain immediately activates the mesolimbic reward pathway. This is the same system that lights up when someone wins at blackjack, bites into a cupcake, or hears their crush say their name. And yes, it's also the pathway that drugs like cocaine and nicotine exploit. The stakes are higher than they seem. One mainstream psychology study out of Harvard used fMRI scans to watch how people's brains responded to social media notifications. The reward centers lit up exactly the way they do in gamblers when they're on a hot streak. You're not just reading a message, you're pulling a lever on a mental slot machine. And most of the time, you don't even realize it. But here's the kicker, your brain learns fast. The more often a notification brings you good news, a compliment, a like, a message from someone special, the more your brain starts releasing dopamine before you even check it. The cue, the ping, becomes just as rewarding as the outcome. That's classic operant conditioning, like what Pavlov did with his dogs, except now it's your phone training you. You might find this surprising. Slot machines in casinos are legally required to use randomness to keep players from predicting wins. Guess what else uses randomized rewards? Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. The algorithms don't show you the same kind of content in the same way every time. They scatter the likes, the shares, the "your friend posted something" alerts. This keeps your brain constantly guessing and craving. A curious detail, some app developers intentionally delay push notifications to create a stronger craving loop. You tap your phone, hoping for a hit, and when there's nothing, your brain starts ramping up tension. The eventual notification, even if it's boring, releases a bigger dopamine wave just from the wait. It's the emotional equivalent of waiting outside a bakery and finally getting a cookie. Even if it's oatmeal raisin, you're still thrilled. Philosophers still argue whether dopamine-seeking behavior is a modern adaptation or a primitive relic. On one hand, the ability to quickly detect rewarding cues helped our ancestors survive, finding ripe fruit, spotting firelight, hearing the sound of water. But today, it's often redirected toward artificial triggers, like red icons and chime sounds. Are we adapting? Or are we just being manipulated better? Now here's where things get sneakier. Dopamine doesn't just tell you what to pay attention to. It starts shaping your behavior over time. You begin to associate certain times of day, places, or emotions with checking your phone. Bored? Check. Lonely? Scroll. In line at the grocery store? Might as well see who tagged you. Without even noticing, you've built a neurological loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. And because dopamine is so tightly tied to novelty, your brain eventually becomes less sensitive to familiar content. That's why social media apps constantly change their layout, sound effects, and animations. Every update is like tossing a new toy into the dopamine cage, and your brain perks up. Ooh, new reaction buttons. Now stories play backwards. You don't even care if it makes sense, your brain just wants the next jolt. There's even a term for this, hedonic adaptation. It means the same reward stops feeling as exciting after a while, so you need a bigger, newer, louder version to get the same hit. That's why what felt satisfying 3 years ago, say, a couple of likes, is now barely noticeable unless it's a flood of notifications. The bar keeps rising, and your brain keeps chasing. And just like that, your attention is no longer your own. It belongs to a circuit in your brain that's been taught to prioritize ping over peace, buzz over breath, novelty over depth. But here's a soft pause, because even though all of this might sound a little manipulative, it's also human. Your brain isn't broken. It's responding exactly how evolution intended. You want to feel connected. You want to feel rewarded. You want to feel like something's happening. That's not addiction, it's a system doing its job. It just happens to be running on someone else's schedule. Let's slow that down. The ping triggers attention. The attention opens the door to dopamine. And the dopamine teaches your brain that checking your phone is worth doing again. And again. And again. So the next time you feel that little buzz in your pocket, or worse, think you felt it, you'll know what's happening underneath. Your brain's not weak. It's just trained. That shift in energy leads us into something else, something you might already suspect but haven't fully unpacked. What if it's not the reward that hooks you, but the anticipation? We're going there next. There's something funny, almost mischievous, about your brain. Because it turns out, it's not always the thing itself that excites you. Not the message. Not the like. Not even the video. It's the wait. The build-up. The maybe. This is where we step into the realm of anticipation. And here's the strange part, your brain often prefers the suspense of not knowing over the satisfaction of actually knowing. You're not addicted to the reward. You're addicted to wondering if one is coming. When you hear that little chime, your brain's dopamine system doesn't wait for the content. It lights up right away. Before you even open your phone. Why? Because anticipation is the reward. It's the promise of possibility, the unknown behind the screen. Maybe someone tagged you. Maybe it's your crush. Maybe it's just an app update. But maybe. There's a famous study from University College London that tracked brain activity when people were told they had a 50% chance of receiving a shock. And guess what? Their stress response was highest not when the shock actually happened, but while they waited to find out if it would happen. The suspense was worse than the pain. That's the power of uncertainty. And your brain experiences something eerily similar every time you wait to check a notification. You scroll, not because you know something good is coming, but because something might. And the might is the hook. That tiny microdose of tension. It's the same reason you might watch a bad movie just to see what happens. The ending might be awful, but your brain wants closure. In marketing psychology, this effect is called variable ratio reinforcement, and it's the most powerful form of behavioral conditioning. It's used in slot machines, loot boxes in games, and yes, social media feeds. Instead of giving you a reward every time, they give it to you sometimes. Randomly. Sporadically. So you keep checking, waiting for that one golden moment. Here's a fun twist you might not expect. Pigeons trained with variable rewards will peck a button hundreds of times, even if they only get food occasionally. But pigeons with consistent rewards? They stop when they're full. Guess which group behaves more like a human with a phone? A long-standing controversy surrounds the idea of anticipatory addiction, whether it's even fair to call it addiction when what's being chased isn't the reward, but the moment before the reward. Some researchers argue it's a mislabeling, while others believe it's the purest form of behavioral dependency. Still, most agree, the brain cares more about what might happen than what actually does. So what does that mean for you? It means you're wired to chase shadows. The thrill isn't in the message, it's in not knowing what the message could be. That little red dot on your app icon? It's a mystery box. And your brain loves mystery boxes. Here's the twist, anticipation is a double-edged sword. It creates excitement, but also anxiety. That's why even thinking about checking your phone can speed up your heartbeat. It's why you feel restless after hearing a sound and resisting the urge to look. You're trying to resist a neural urge that's been training quietly for years. Let's walk through a typical moment. You're in line at a coffee shop. You feel your phone vibrate. You don't even check it yet. But already, your thoughts have scattered. Could it be work? A delivery update? Something important? Even if you decide to ignore it, your focus is fractured. The mere possibility of something interesting has pulled you out of the moment. And what happens when you do check? Often, it's mundane. A spam email. A notification about someone going live. An app reminding you to drink water, as if your body forgot how to hydrate. But you still check. Because your brain doesn't actually care if the result is underwhelming. It already got its dose of dopamine just thinking about it. Remember that earlier study where performance dropped just from hearing a notification? That drop didn't require you to open your phone. The anticipation alone was enough to split your attention. That's how tightly wired your brain is to these signals. This is where the mental loop gets dangerous. Because when you start seeking notifications just to relieve the discomfort of waiting for one, you're no longer chasing pleasure. You're chasing relief. And that's a slippery slope. And yet, it's not all doom. There's something deeply human about loving surprises. About being curious. Your brain wants to explore. Wants to be delighted. That's not a flaw. It's wonder. But that wonder is being gamified, sold back to you in digital sprinkles. So how do you notice when anticipation is hijacking your time? One clue: you keep opening the same app over and over, even though nothing new is happening. Another: you scroll without reading. You swipe before processing. Your brain is chasing something that might be there, even when nothing actually is. This loop is strongest when your emotional state is low. Boredom, sadness, loneliness, these are anticipation triggers. Your brain thinks, maybe something will happen to fix this feeling. So you check again. And again. It's soothing, until it isn't. Let's soften this here: you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're living inside a reward system that's been carefully architected to seduce the anticipatory parts of your brain. You're playing a game with no ending and infinite coins. Of course it's hard to step away. But knowing what anticipation does, how it shapes your urges, splits your focus, and deepens your cravings, gives you power. When you recognize that familiar tension, that itch to check, you can pause. You can breathe. And you can ask, am I checking for joy, or just to quiet the silence? That question lingers as we ease into the next layer of this journey. Because if anticipation pulls you in, something else keeps you there, something rooted in fear. Not fear of missing a notification, but fear of missing out. We'll go there next. So, anticipation sets the trap. It whispers maybe, it dangles possibility, and your brain bites. But the real emotional anchor, the thing that tugs you back into your screen over and over, isn't hope. It's fear. Specifically, the fear of missing out, FOMO, as it's affectionately abbreviated by the internet. You know it. You felt it. That itch when you see someone else having fun without you. That low hum of anxiety when your friends are all talking about something you haven't seen yet. The sinking moment when a notification makes you realize a plan happened, and you weren't invited. This fear, this aching little gap between you and the in-group, is one of the oldest social instincts in your brain. Back when humans lived in tight-knit tribes, exclusion wasn't just sad, it was dangerous. Being left out could literally mean the end of you. So your brain evolved to monitor social cues constantly. Are you being included? Are you safe? Are you still part of the group? Fast forward to now, and instead of scanning for who's sharing fire or who's guarding the cave, your brain is scanning for who's posting, liking, tagging, sharing. Same instinct, different jungle. One mainstream psychology study from the University of Essex found that even passive social media use, just seeing what others are doing, can increase feelings of exclusion. Participants who browsed vacation photos and party pictures reported lower satisfaction with their own lives, even when they were otherwise content. The more you look, the more you feel like you're missing something. This may catch you off guard. FOMO isn't always tied to envy. It can show up as guilt, anxiety, or even obligation. Ever feel weirdly stressed when someone sends you a funny video and you don't respond right away? That social reciprocity pressure, your brain telling you, if I don't engage, I might get left behind. And here's an odd but true fact. There's now an opposite term, JOMO, the joy of missing out, which started as a wellness trend, encouraging people to unplug. But funnily enough, JOMO itself became an Instagrammable lifestyle. Think soft-filtered photos of people reading books by candlelight, hashtagging their way into digital serenity. So even the rebellion against FOMO has, well, FOMO baked into it. There remains considerable disagreement about whether FOMO is a natural result of social technology or a manufactured byproduct of algorithmic design. Some researchers argue it's simply a digital amplification of timeless social anxiety. Others believe tech platforms deliberately engineer content to provoke feelings of exclusion, knowing that anxious users engage more. The truth? Likely both. Evolution laid the wiring. Platforms plugged it in. Let's zoom into a scenario. You're working, or trying to. Your phone lights up. Group chat, last night was wild. And immediately, your brain starts doing the math. Wait, what last night? Was there a party? Did I miss a plan? It doesn't even matter what the details are. That emotional punch lands first. You feel behind. You feel othered. And just like that, your focus is gone. Even seeing people you barely know enjoying themselves can trigger it. Someone you met twice is at a rooftop bar. Someone from high school just got married. Someone else is on their 4th international vacation this year. Your brain isn't comparing logistics. It's comparing feelings. They're happy. I'm not. Why not me? And notifications are the courier pigeons of FOMO. They carry tiny messages from the social world into your quiet personal one. When your phone buzzes with, so-and-so is going live, or, you were mentioned in a comment, it's offering you a ticket, an invitation to stay relevant, stay included, stay in it. Missing that moment might mean missing the conversation later, the inside joke, the bonding. This is especially powerful in group dynamics. Ever been in a group chat where messages keep flowing, and you go a few hours without checking? The next time you open it, there's 173 unread messages, and you feel like you missed a week-long summit on inside jokes and existential memes. It doesn't matter if most of the messages are nonsense. You still feel the pressure to catch up, to stay updated. This is where the emotional side of the brain, the limbic system, works overtime. It doesn't just process alerts. It judges them. Do I belong? Am I behind? Do they still like me? You weren't consciously thinking about any of this 5 seconds ago. Now your heart rate's up and your thumb is scrolling. Even silence can trigger it. If everyone else is posting and you're not, you start to feel invisible. Notifications become proof that you exist. They signal that someone noticed you, that you're part of the flow. No pings. No presence. And don't forget the social currency system. Likes, shares, and replies are little micro-validations. They tell your brain, you said something good. You're accepted. And when those notifications don't arrive, your brain doesn't stay neutral. It asks, what did I do wrong? That's when FOMO morphs into something deeper, what some psychologists call online social inferiority. You start to believe your life is objectively less interesting, less connected, less lovable than everyone else's. Even if you know it's just curated content, the emotion lingers. Let's take a small breath here. It's not your fault. This isn't about weakness. This is your brain doing its best to belong. And in a world where every notification is a signal from your digital tribe, not answering can feel like stepping out into the cold. But here's the comfort, missing out is inevitable. Always has been. In ancient times, you missed stories told around other campfires. Now, you miss viral dances, surprise concerts, or a 40-minute meme thread. You cannot be everywhere. You never could. The difference is, now your phone reminds you exactly what you're not part of, every few minutes. That realization leads gently to something else your brain struggles with, something that wears down your focus more than you think, the inability to tell what matters and what doesn't. Because after all that input, all those pings and posts and missed moments, how do you even decide what's worth your attention? Let's go there next. By now, you've felt the rush of the ping. The tug of anticipation. The twist of missing out. Your brain's been lit up like a late-night diner, open, buzzing, overstimulated. But underneath the craving and the FOMO, there's something more subtle at play. Something sneakier. It's your brain's filtering system, quietly falling apart. You see, your mind was never built for the volume of input it receives every day. Every notification, every alert, every badge with a glowing red number, they all ask the same question: is this important? And your brain? It tries. It really does. But the flood is endless. There's a mechanism called selective attention. It's how your brain decides what to focus on and what to ignore. It filters stimuli like a mental bouncer, letting in only what's deemed relevant. This system worked great when relevant meant things like leopard in the bushes or storm approaching. But now? Now, the input is a random carousel of trivia, texts, TikToks, trauma, and toaster hacks. The sheer variety and speed of notifications completely overwhelm that filter. You start reacting to everything with the same mental priority. Work email? Buzz. Comment on your selfie? Buzz. Push alert from your news app about a celebrity's breakup? Also buzz. Your brain doesn't know which ones to flag and which ones to discard. So it flags them all. A well-known study from MIT revealed that constant digital interruptions reduce your brain's ability to distinguish between urgent and irrelevant. You begin to respond to all pings like mini-emergencies. Everything feels equally pressing, even when it's not. And when everything's urgent, nothing really is. You might find this surprising. The average person receives between 65 and 80 smartphone notifications per day. That's not counting glances, phantom vibrations, or app refreshes. That's 80 little nudges pulling your attention away from wherever you were. 80 tiny splits in your thought stream. Just a quirky detail, there's actually a name for the moment your brain freezes from too many choices: decision fatigue. It's the same reason you feel weirdly exhausted after scrolling for 20 minutes, trying to pick a show to watch. Your mental filter has collapsed. It can't rank anything anymore. Everything's just noise. And here's the kicker: once your filtering system breaks down, you start wasting energy on trivial things. You reread messages. You cycle between apps. You doom scroll even when you're not interested. Why? Because your brain's default mode, deciding what matters, has been numbed by overexposure. There remains considerable disagreement about whether our brains can readapt and develop stronger filters over time. Some researchers believe neuroplasticity will eventually allow younger generations to manage digital overload with greater resilience. Others argue that the constant pace of input will keep outpacing our evolutionary ability to cope. The conversation is ongoing, and frankly, the data is mixed. Here's a simple metaphor: your attention is like a stage spotlight. In a quiet, dark room, that spotlight shines clearly on one thing. But when 100 lights flicker on around it, you don't know where to aim. You're not choosing what to focus on. You're reacting to whatever blinks the loudest. And notifications are built to be loud, visually, audibly, and emotionally. Bright colors. Sharp sounds. Red circles. They're designed to cut through your cognitive fog, not gently whisper in your ear. This means your brain starts reacting to the signal, not the content. Even a meaningless alert can trigger a full mental pivot. Let's walk into a moment. You're writing something, maybe an email. You're in the zone. Flowing. Then, ding. A delivery app reminds you there's a new coupon. You ignore it. You think you're fine. But when you return to the email, your train of thought is gone. The spotlight dimmed, then flickered. Now you're rewriting the last sentence, trying to recapture the idea. It's like trying to finish a dream after waking up. This isn't about distraction. This is about depletion. Because every time you switch mental gears, your brain uses energy. Not just focus, glucose. Literal biological fuel. Tiny amounts, sure, but over a day? Over a week? You're burning brain calories on nonsense. Notifications are like someone ringing your doorbell constantly, just to tell you the weather is still the same. And over time, that drain leaves you feeling foggy, drained, and mentally scattered. You don't remember things as well. You lose track of conversations. You start rereading the same sentence 3 times before it sticks. It's not because you're tired. It's because your mental gatekeeper is overwhelmed. You might have noticed this yourself. On days with fewer alerts, you feel sharper. You get more done. Conversations feel smoother. You're not constantly being tugged sideways by your own pocket. But it's hard to protect that mental gate when it's being nudged every 10 minutes. You might say, I'll just ignore the buzz, but that's like trying to ignore someone tapping you on the shoulder during a conversation. You feel it, whether you respond or not. So what do you do when your brain can't tell what's noise and what's signal? You start to compensate. You overcheck, thinking you'll catch what matters. You underfocus, assuming you'll circle back later. You become reactive instead of intentional. And eventually, you start to mistake activity for meaning. But here's the quieter truth. Your brain wants to focus. It longs for depth. For silence. For signal without static. The more noise it endures, the more it craves clarity. That ache you feel after a day of constant alerts? That's not just exhaustion. That's a longing for mental stillness. And that yearning brings us gently into the next layer, because when your brain can't filter, it tries something else. It starts juggling. It tries to do it all at once. Which leads us to the great myth of our age. Multitasking. Let's unfold that illusion next. Now that your brain's filter has been hijacked, pinged into submission by hundreds of little alerts, it turns to its backup plan. If it can't prioritize the noise, it'll try to juggle it all at once. Welcome to the myth of multitasking, where your brain convinces itself that it can split its focus cleanly, like slicing a cake into perfect little pieces. Spoiler, it can't. Not even close. But let's back up a bit. Multitasking feels productive, right? You answer emails while watching Netflix. You scroll through Instagram during lunch. You listen to a podcast while replying to DMs. It feels like you're getting more done. Like you're winning some secret time efficiency game. Here's the reality. Every time you switch tasks, even for a second, your brain performs what psychologists call a task switch cost. It has to disengage from one mental context, reload the next, and refocus. This switch isn't seamless. It's laggy. Glitchy. Full of mental static. One widely cited study out of Stanford found that people who frequently multitasked with media, texting while watching videos, for example, performed worse on tests of attention and memory than those who didn't. Their brains had rewired into constant scanning mode, not deep processing mode. They weren't processing information, they were browsing it. A little surprise for you, your brain can't technically do 2 high-focus tasks at once. What it actually does is switch rapidly between them. It's not multitasking. It's microtask switching. And each of those little pivots costs energy and time. Studies show it can take up to 23 minutes to return to full focus after a disruption. 23 minutes. For one notification. That means a single buzz during your lunch break can disrupt the rest of your afternoon. Here's a quirky little truth. The term multitasking was originally used to describe computer processing, not human behavior. Early computers could switch between jobs quickly enough to give the illusion of doing them all at once. So when humans borrowed the word, it already came with false assumptions baked in. And yet, your brain tries. It tries hard. It wants to be capable of flipping between real life and notifications like a DJ spinning tracks. The problem? Human cognition isn't modular. Your attention doesn't live in tidy compartments. It's more like a stream, every redirection stirs the water. Let's try a quick mental image. Picture yourself talking to a friend in a cozy cafe. You're engaged, listening, sipping something warm. Then, halfway through their sentence, your phone buzzes. You glance down. A work email. You read it. It's not urgent, but now you're thinking about deadlines, your to-do list, maybe even the tone of that email. You look up again, and your friend's still talking. But you're no longer there. Not completely. Your brain didn't just pause the conversation. It rerouted your cognitive highway. And even though your face might nod politely, your thoughts are now fragmented. And here's the kicker, you may not even notice. Because the illusion of multitasking is so strong, we believe we're still being present. But we're not. We're ghosting ourselves. There's a long-standing controversy in psychology about media multitasking and whether younger generations are truly better at it. Some argue that digital natives, those raised with constant screens, are adapting. Others say they're simply developing new forms of distraction. Research hasn't reached a clear answer, but one trend is obvious: focus is getting harder for everyone. And the notification cycle is central to this. Each alert invites you to split your focus just a bit more. Each message says, "This will only take a second." And maybe it does. But those seconds compound. That fractured attention spills into everything: conversations, creativity, sleep, memory. You know this feeling already. You've probably sat through a movie and only remembered half of it. You've started a task, gotten 3 messages in the meantime, and had no idea where you left off. It's not laziness. It's mental spillage, tiny leaks in your cognitive container caused by switching too often, too fast. Here's something to reflect on: deep focus is not just about efficiency. It's about immersion. The ability to sink into something, whether it's a book, a task, a conversation, is tied to your brain's ability to exclude everything else. Notifications don't just interrupt that. They erode your brain's ability to do it at all. But here's where it gets especially cruel. Your brain often rewards multitasking emotionally. You feel accomplished for checking something off. You feel socially connected after replying to a DM. You feel productive because your hands were busy. And all the while, you're drifting further from true mental presence. You're training your brain to expect constant novelty. So when silence comes, when there's nothing to check or swipe, it feels wrong. Boring. Uncomfortable. That's not your fault. That's conditioning. Your brain has been rewired to find peace, unsettling. Let's anchor in that thought for a moment. Because when we talk about attention, we're also talking about identity. Where your attention goes, that's where you go. Your memories. Your emotions. Your creative spark. If notifications are constantly redirecting that, then over time, your sense of self becomes scattered. But there's more. Because your brain doesn't just lose focus when multitasking, it loses rest. Even when you're not doing anything, your brain needs mental downtime to recharge. To daydream. To process emotions. But if you're constantly toggling between apps and thoughts, your resting circuits never turn on. And those circuits? They're not just a luxury. They're vital. Which brings us to the next shift in this journey. Because as your mind tries to multitask, it disrupts a hidden, essential part of your brain, a network that runs in the background, quietly shaping your inner life. It's called the default mode network. And next, we're going to see how social media hijacks that too. So far, you've wandered through anticipation, wrestled with FOMO, and watched your attention get stretched thin like warm taffy by the illusion of multitasking. But beneath all that noise, something deeper is being disrupted, something most people don't even know exists. It's the quiet machinery of your inner world, humming away in the background. It's called the default mode network, or DMN if you're feeling nerdy. And trust me, you rely on it more than you think. The default mode network is what your brain activates when you're not focused on anything in particular. It's your resting state mode. When you're staring out the window, lost in thought, when you're daydreaming on the bus, when you lie in bed tracing back the events of your day, that's your DMN at work. It's where your brain processes memory, constructs your sense of self, and even contemplates the future. It's the space where creativity brews, where empathy takes root, where insight bubbles up unexpectedly while you're shampooing your hair. You might not feel like you're doing anything, but in those quiet, unfocused moments, your mind is running some of its most essential programs. Now picture what happens when a notification breaks that spell. You're staring at the ceiling. Your thoughts are adrift. Maybe you're replaying a conversation or imagining your next vacation. Then buzz. Your hand reaches for your phone before your conscious mind catches up. Suddenly, you're in an app. You're scrolling. You've snapped out of the DMN and into goal-directed attention mode. The inner story cuts off mid-sentence. One study out of Harvard Medical School found that interruptions to the default mode network cause a measurable drop in emotional processing. In other words, when you're pulled out of that space, you feel less connected to yourself, and less capable of understanding others. And this isn't just about feelings. It's also about cognitive hygiene. Your brain needs downtime the way your muscles need rest after a workout. Here's something interesting. The DMN is more active when you're doing nothing than when you're actively working. That's right, your brain lights up during daydreaming. That's where long-term planning, creative solutions, and self-reflection happen. It's not lazy. It's vital. This one might raise an eyebrow. The DMN was discovered almost by accident. Neuroscientists noticed that certain brain regions lit up during idle time when test subjects weren't doing anything at all. At first, they thought it was noise. Then they realized, no, this is a whole network. One that's just as important as the on-task systems. One that keeps us emotionally grounded. You may not believe this, but it's real. Buddhist monks in deep meditation show increased default mode activity and improved control over it. This suggests that being deeply still, not blank, but inwardly engaged, can sharpen the DMN rather than shut it off. Compare that to the jolt of a TikTok video at 1:32 a.m. and, well, you see the issue. There remains considerable disagreement about how much default mode time is enough. Some researchers argue we need large swaths of unstructured time to allow for emotional integration. Others believe shorter, deliberate pockets of reflection are sufficient. But almost all agree, our current lifestyles leave us starved for it. Let's bring it into your world. Imagine you're on a walk. No music, no phone, just your thoughts. Your brain meanders, reliving a memory, solving a problem in the background, constructing a hypothetical conversation you might never have. It's slow, organic, restorative. Now compare that to the same walk with your phone buzzing every 3 minutes. You don't drop into thought. You surf the surface. Your inner voice gets chopped up by external ones. This is what notifications do, they fragment the self. Not dramatically. Not with sirens. But gently, persistently. They shave off seconds from your reflective moments, nudging you to swap internal questions for external updates. Instead of asking how do I feel today, you're asking who commented on my reel. Over time, this shapes your emotional fluency. You become less practiced at sitting with ambiguity. Less comfortable with boredom. Less attuned to your inner monologue. And more reliant on constant input to feel occupied, validated, or on track. Here's a quiet example. You're about to fall asleep. Your brain begins drifting, maybe you're thinking about childhood, maybe an unfinished conversation. You feel something starting to emerge. Then, ping. A late-night group chat meme. Your eyes flick open. Your thoughts are gone. That gentle unfolding? Replaced with a dopamine-driven laugh and a second scroll. And now the idea that was forming? Vanished. One researcher described the DMN as the canvas on which your emotional life is painted. Interruptions don't just rip the painting. They remove the canvas altogether. You're left reacting to moments, not reflecting on them. Now, this doesn't mean notifications are evil. Sometimes they bring warmth. Connection. a smile. But when they constantly hijack your mental stillness, they rob your brain of one of its most important functions, the ability to sit with itself. You might have noticed this yourself. Maybe after an hour with your phone off, your thoughts feel clearer, deeper, more yours. That's the DMN waking up. It's not silence. It's self-reconnection. And in that, there's a kind of peace. A reclaiming of space. A whisper beneath the static. But of course, this whisper can be easily drowned out, especially late at night, when the pings keep coming, and sleep hovers just out of reach. Because what happens when the buzzing doesn't stop at bedtime? When screens and sleep go head to head? That's where we're headed next. By now, you know that your brain isn't just reacting to notifications, it's being reshaped by them. But as night falls, and the glow of your screen replaces the softness of the moon, there's one battleground where this tug-of-war becomes painfully clear. Sleep. You felt it, the intention to go to bed early. The quiet routine. Brushing your teeth, maybe reading a page or two, and then ping. A notification lights up your screen. One last check turns into 15. Suddenly it's 1:17 a.m., and you're watching a video of someone turning garden hoses into spaghetti. You're not even sure how you got here. You just drifted. That drift isn't laziness. It's biological. Your brain's relationship with sleep is delicate, choreographed by chemicals and rhythms. Chief among them? Melatonin, the hormone that signals your body it's time to rest. But melatonin is easily tricked. Especially by blue light, the very thing your phone emits. Blue light suppresses melatonin production, making your brain think it's still daytime. So even if you feel tired, your system stays in go mode. One mainstream study out of Harvard confirmed this. People who used screens before bed had significantly lower melatonin levels and took longer to fall asleep. Their REM cycles were shorter, and their sleep was lighter. Even after turning off the devices, their brains stayed wired, like trying to fall asleep in a noisy room, even after the music stops. But it's not just the light, it's the content. Notifications, especially at night, fire up your brain's alertness systems. A text, a news headline, a calendar reminder, they all activate the locus coeruleus, a part of your brainstem that releases noradrenaline. That's right, your phone is giving you a tiny dose of fight or flight right before bed. Sweet dreams, right? And it's not just major alerts. Even minor ones nudge your sleep quality. A group message ping. A notification that someone you follow just went live. Your brain registers these as unfinished business. And unfinished business is the enemy of sleep. Here's something interesting. Sleep scientists talk about pre-sleep arousal, a state where your mind is too active to settle. Notifications increase this arousal, nudging your brain into loops of thought. You close your eyes, but you're still thinking about the last message. Or who didn't reply. Or whether you should have said something funnier in the group chat. You might find this surprising. Even if you don't check a late-night notification, your sleep can still suffer. The mere awareness that something might be waiting for you can increase cognitive tension. You're trying to sleep with one mental eye open. A curious detail worth noting, in sleep labs, participants who were told they might be contacted during the night, even if they never were, had more restless sleep patterns. Their bodies remained in a semi-alert state. This means your phone's presence alone, even face down on the nightstand, can disrupt the deep sleep your brain craves. There remains considerable disagreement about how much digital exposure before bed is safe. Some experts say 30 minutes of screen-free time is enough to restore melatonin flow. Others recommend a full hour, or cutting out screens completely after sunset. But with work, entertainment, and social lives increasingly tied to devices, this becomes less practical, and more wishful. Let's come into a softer moment now. You're lying in bed. The lights are off. The room is quiet. Your body is tired, but your mind? Still scrolling. Not just with your thumb, but mentally. You're reviewing the day. Replaying a conversation. Wondering if you missed something. It's like your brain is still on a treadmill it never stepped off. And each notification pulls you back onto that treadmill. Like, here. A ping there. Your brain gets just enough stimulus to delay its descent into sleep mode. It's like someone whispering your name every time you start to drift off. This is more than an inconvenience. It's a slow erosion. Chronic sleep disruption affects memory consolidation, emotional regulation, even your immune system. A tired brain is a foggy brain. A distracted brain. A more reactive brain. You may have noticed it. Waking up feeling unrest, even if you got enough hours. Feeling more irritable, less creative, more prone to zoning out midday. That's the sleep debt talking, compounded not by loud noise or caffeine, but by soft little pings in the dark. And here's a thought, when your final moment of consciousness each day is shaped by a notification, what does that do to your dreams? To the emotional tone you carry into sleep? You're not just scrolling content. You're scrolling mood. And the mood you fall asleep with often becomes the mood you wake up to. Now, this isn't about guilt. We all do it. The late night scroll is seductive. It's comforting. It makes you feel connected before drifting off alone. But over time, it chips away at your brain's ability to fully rest. And it replaces your natural nighttime rituals, reflection, stillness, imagination, with digital noise. Let's breathe here. It's not about perfection. It's about protection. Protecting those precious minutes before sleep. Guarding them like sacred space. You don't need to delete every app or toss your phone out the window. But maybe, just maybe, tonight, you switch it to airplane mode 10 minutes earlier. Maybe you let your mind wander on its own. Because when your brain gets silence, it begins to settle. And in that settling, real rest begins. And as you settle deeper, one more layer reveals itself. One more hook that keeps your brain leaning toward the screen, something not driven by fear, or even habit, but by validation. It's time to talk about the loop your brain loves most, being seen. Let's step into that next. You followed the buzz, weathered the anticipation, slipped into FOMO, and even watched your sleep unravel under the soft glow of a screen. But beneath all that, beneath the dopamine loops and drained attention, sits a deeper need. A quieter craving. The one your brain has been whispering about all along. The need to be seen. When you receive a notification, especially one tied to social feedback, like a like, a comment, or a new follower, it activates far more than just curiosity. It taps into your brain's social validation system, a powerful emotional loop that's been with you since the moment you learned to smile at a parent's face and saw them smile back. It feels good to be noticed. Really good. Because to your brain, being seen is synonymous with being valued, and being valued is a survival signal. In evolutionary terms, social inclusion meant protection, food, mating opportunities. To be validated by others was to be kept in the circle. That wiring never left. So now, when your phone lights up with a tiny heart icon, your brain doesn't see a digital thumbs up. It sees safety. Approval. Worth. One mainstream psychology study from UCLA found that receiving social media likes activates the ventral striatum, the same reward center that lights up when you eat something delicious or win a small amount of money. Teens in the study showed particularly strong responses, but adults weren't far behind. The message is clear, your brain registers likes as little social paychecks. Here's something interesting, the feedback loop goes both ways. Not only do you feel good when you're liked, you feel bad when you're not. Incomplete. Invisible. This is what makes the social validation loop so powerful. It's driven by both reward and avoidance. You chase the hit, but also fear the silence. Did you know people actually rate themselves less favorably after getting fewer likes than expected on a post? One experiment asked participants to post selfies and then showed them artificially altered like counts. Those who received low engagement, even on pictures they had originally liked, reported lower self-esteem. That's not vanity. That's emotional neurochemistry reacting to perceived social rejection. Something unexpected but real. The original like button wasn't meant to create obsession, it was a way to reduce negative comments. But over time, it became a public scoreboard. A way to measure social worth in real time. And once that score became visible, your brain couldn't help but check it. Compare it. Depend on it. There remains considerable disagreement about whether social media use truly causes low self-esteem or whether people with low self-esteem are more drawn to social media for validation. It's the classic chicken or egg debate, with studies on both sides. But most agree, once the loop is in place, it reinforces itself. The more you check for likes, the more you tie your value to them. Let's step into a familiar moment. You post something. Maybe a photo, maybe a tweet. It felt right when you shared it. A little personal. A little clever. Then you wait. And wait. A few likes come in, but not from who you hoped. A couple of replies, but none that really land. That sinking feeling? That's your brain processing unmet social expectations. You didn't just post content. You made an offering. And your brain read the response like a popularity meter. Now, here's the twist, even when you get validation, it's often fleeting. That dopamine spike fades quickly. So what do? You chase the next one. You check back. Refresh. You post again, hoping to catch a better wave. Maybe this time the caption will land. Maybe this filter will hit harder. It's not always conscious, but it's consistent. This loop rewires your sense of worth around external feedback. You start crafting yourself for visibility. You crop the photo. You tweak the wording. You overthink the timing. And all of that attention shifts away from how you feel about yourself, and toward how you're being perceived. And when you don't get the engagement you hoped for, you begin to question more than just the post. You question yourself. Let's breathe here. That feeling isn't shallow. It's not silly. It's deeply human. We're wired to seek reflection. And in a world where our reflections come in the form of red hearts and fire emojis, it's easy to confuse applause with identity. This gets even more tangled when you think about who you're getting the validation from. Your brain doesn't weigh all notifications equally. A like from your best friend? Gold. A comment from someone you admire? Even better. A view from your ex? Oh no. That one sends your mind into a spiral. Because now, notifications aren't just signals, they're narratives. Microstories your brain spins out in seconds. Why did they like this one but not the last? Did they mean to see that? Are they thinking about me? The loop grows legs and runs. You begin to check your post like a stock ticker. Who's seen it? Who hasn't? Did that story get more replies? What time should I post next? You start optimizing yourself for attention. And the more you optimize, the more your worth feels tied to performance. But here's a softer truth. Being seen doesn't always mean being valued. And not being seen doesn't mean you're invisible. Your worth isn't held hostage by an algorithm, even if it sometimes feels that way. You're not wrong for wanting to be acknowledged. That's ancient wiring. But you can start noticing when that desire starts shaping your habits more than your values. And ironically, true validation, the kind that lasts, often comes in silence. In eye contact. In a thoughtful message. In the absence of constant checking. In knowing who you are, even when no one is liking it. Let's ease into that knowing. Because once you begin to see the loop, you also begin to wonder, am I addicted? Or am I just attached? And that's the next quiet question we'll explore together. You felt the anticipation, the FOMO, the pull of being seen. You've watched your thoughts fragment and your sleep fade. Now a quieter thought starts to form in your mind, like a whisper at the edge of your awareness. Is this an addiction? Or something else? This is where things get a little murky. Not because the feelings aren't real, but because the science still hasn't quite caught up. The truth is, your relationship with notifications, with screens, with social media. It might look like addiction, feel like addiction, but the experts still can't agree on what to call it. Let's start with what addiction typically means. In clinical psychology, addiction isn't just doing something a lot. It's about compulsive use despite negative consequences. It's using something to regulate mood, escape distress, or avoid real life, and being unable to stop, even when it harms you. So let's ask gently, have you ever felt anxious when you couldn't check your phone? Have you ever hidden in a bathroom just to scroll? Lost hours in a blur of content? Ignored real-life conversations in favor of digital ones? These aren't rare behaviors. They're common. But are they addiction? Or are they just signs of emotional attachment? There's a long-standing controversy around the label, social media addiction. Some researchers argue that it meets all the criteria of behavioral addiction. It involves a cycle of craving, reward, withdrawal, and relapse. Others push back, warning that calling everything an addiction dilutes the term and stigmatizes normal behavior. After all, we're social creatures. Wanting connection isn't pathological. Here's something interesting. The brain's reward system doesn't really differentiate between chemical and behavioral highs. Whether it's cocaine or a buzz from a popular post, the dopaminergic pathway lights up. That doesn't mean they're equivalent, but it does mean your brain treats the reward loop seriously, even if society laughs it off. A little surprise for you, some therapists now treat excessive screen use the same way they treat compulsive gambling or binge eating. Not because it's identical, but because the underlying emotional patterns are strikingly similar. Escapism. Numbing. Mood regulation. Habit. But here's where the line blurs even more. Because social media isn't just a tool. It's a space. A place where relationships unfold, stories are shared, self-worth is displayed. So when someone checks their notifications 100 times a day, they're not just craving dopamine. They might be craving connection. Or identity. Or belonging. In one global study, more than 60% of people reported checking their phones within 5 minutes of waking up. And nearly half of them said it wasn't about urgency, it was about anxiety. They didn't want to miss anything. It wasn't addiction. It was comfort. Now let's lean into that idea of attachment. Think about a child and a blanket. The blanket offers safety, familiarity, a sense of control in a chaotic world. Adults aren't much different. Your phone, your notification feed, it's the digital blanket. It's your connection to people, to information, to reassurance. It's the constant companion that's always just a touch away. This kind of attachment isn't necessarily unhealthy. But when the attachment starts to feel necessary, when silence becomes uncomfortable, and restlessness sets in without a buzz, then your brain is no longer choosing. It's reacting. Let's ease into a familiar moment. You're sitting somewhere quiet. No music. No podcast. Just stillness. Within seconds, your hand moves toward your phone. Not because it rang. Not because you need it. Just because. That twitchy reach? That's learned behavior. And underneath it is a little voice that says, this moment needs to be filled. That's not addiction. That's a nervous system trying to stay regulated in a world full of noise. You may have noticed this, sometimes you don't even enjoy the scroll. It feels automatic. Compulsive. You're not gaining insight or joy, you're grazing. Swiping. Looping. It's not pleasure-seeking anymore. It's discomfort avoiding. And this is where it gets tricky. Because unlike drugs or alcohol, social media doesn't always leave obvious wreckage. There's no hangover. No physical withdrawals. Just subtle shifts in mood, in focus, in how much of your day slipped through your fingers. So maybe the better question isn't am I addicted? Maybe it's what need is this serving? Is it loneliness? Anxiety? Boredom? A need for affirmation? For routine? Every notification you reach for is trying to answer a question, one you may not have even asked. And here's the beautiful thing, once you name the need, you can start to meet it more consciously. More gently. Craving connection? Maybe one real conversation would do more than 100 likes. Feeling restless? Maybe a walk without your phone brings more peace than an hour of scrolling. It's not about quitting cold turkey. It's about replacing reflex with choice. Let's soften here. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're a human being in a hyper-connected world, doing your best with a brain that was wired for slow, rich connection, and is now being pinged 100 times a day by a handheld universe. Of course you reach for it. Of course it comforts you. But you can step back. Not by shaming the habit. By understanding it. And now, as you begin to see this dance between addiction and attachment, a new question opens up. What about the people still learning to navigate all this? What happens when the brain is still developing, and the notifications are already flooding in? That's where we head next, into the adolescent brain. Let's go there gently. You've followed how notifications play with the adult brain, how they tease out anticipation, hijack attention, interrupt rest, and blur the line between connection and compulsion. But now imagine all of that happening inside a brain that isn't finished building itself. Welcome to the adolescent mind, where the notification loop gets amplified, intensified, and often misunderstood. Teenagers aren't just smaller adults. Their brains are still under construction. Specifically, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning, isn't fully developed until the mid-20s. Meanwhile, the limbic system, which governs emotion and reward, is running hot and fast. That means teens experience emotional highs more intensely, respond to social feedback more dramatically, and struggle more with resisting impulses. And when you throw 100 notifications a day into that mix, things can get a little messy. One mainstream psychology study from the University of North Carolina found that adolescents showed heightened activity in the brain's ventral striatum, that same dopamine-rich area we've talked about, when they received likes on their social media posts. Not just more than adults, but significantly more. Their brains didn't just enjoy the validation. They were flooded by it. Now layer in the social sensitivity that comes with being a teen. During adolescence, peer approval becomes a major driver of identity. You care what your friends think. You care how you're perceived. You care about fitting in, even when you pretend not to. And notifications? They become the scorecard. Who liked your post? Who didn't? Who replied in the group chat? Who left you unread? For a teenage brain, each one of those signals carries weight. Emotional weight. Social status weight. Self-worth weight. You might find this surprising. In several surveys, teens reported feeling anxious when they don't receive responses to messages quickly, especially in group settings. Some even admitted to deleting posts that didn't get enough likes within minutes. The message is clear: online engagement isn't just entertainment, it's emotional currency. An odd but true fact, a term has emerged among teens: cloud anxiety. It refers to the stress of not being seen as relevant, funny, popular, or attractive enough online. Not just FOMO, but a low-grade panic that your digital presence isn't measuring up to your peers. It's self-worth gamified, and judged in real time. There remains considerable disagreement about how deeply social media affects adolescent mental health. Some studies link heavy use to increased rates of depression and anxiety. Others suggest the issue isn't screen time itself, but the type of engagement, passive scrolling versus active connection. But one thing's consistent: teens who feel their social life is tied to digital feedback often experience more emotional volatility. Let's sit in that for a second. Imagine being 15. Your phone buzzes constantly, not with useful information, but with signals about your value. Was that joke funny enough? Did anyone see my story? Did my crush like my photo? You're checking more than notifications. You're checking whether you matter. And when that feedback doesn't arrive, it hits hard. Teens report feeling rejected, invisible, and even socially punished when they're excluded online, whether that's not being tagged in a post or being the only one who didn't get a DM. In adult terms, it might seem small. But to a developing brain, it's massive. This is also the age when habits form. The emotional attachment to your phone, the comfort, the ritual, the dependency, starts here. Notifications don't just become familiar, they become normal. So by the time you're an adult, the compulsive checking isn't a new habit. It's a well-worn path. You may have seen this in real life. The teen glued to their screen at dinner. The adolescent who can't go 5 minutes without checking Snapchat. The middle schooler with anxiety because they can't find their phone charger. These aren't just behavioral quirks. They're signs of a brain still learning where it ends and the world begins. Here's the deeper layer. Notifications teach teens to outsource their emotional regulation. Feeling bored? Check the phone. Feeling insecure? Post something funny. Feeling anxious? Scroll. And while this might seem like normal digital behavior, it subtly trains the brain to avoid discomfort rather than understand it. Which leads to shallower emotional development. Less time spent sitting with feelings. Less time building inner resilience. More time distracting, reacting, performing. But it's not just doom and gloom. Because the teenage brain is incredibly adaptable. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is at its peak in adolescence. That means awareness and guidance can go a long way. Teens who learn to set boundaries with their phones, to create intentional quiet, to ask why they're checking, not just what, develop healthier relationships with tech long-term. You might have even seen glimmers of this shift. Young people turning off notifications during study time. Deleting social apps during exams. Creating close friends lists to reduce performance pressure. It's not that they're helpless. It's that they're still learning how to steer a very fast, very emotional vehicle. And that's where adults can help, not with shaming or lecturing, but with modeling. With empathy. With asking real questions. Because half the time, the teen isn't addicted to their phone. They're trying to feel seen. Connected. Safe. All the things we all want. So maybe tonight, instead of rolling your eyes at a teen glued to their screen, you ask, what are you looking for when you check that? And maybe, just maybe, they ask themselves the same thing. Which brings us gently to a stranger place. A place where you check your phone, and nothing's there. No buzz. No ping. But your brain feels it anyway. Let's step into that phantom sensation next. You've heard it. Or you've felt it. That phantom buzz. A tingling in your pocket. A whisper of vibration against your thigh. Maybe even a faint ping you were sure you heard, until you checked your phone and found nothing at all. No notification. No message. Nothing. Welcome to the strange and slightly eerie world of phantom notifications, where your brain, so conditioned by digital stimuli, begins to invent them on its own. It's not a glitch in your phone. It's a glitch in you. Don't worry. It's surprisingly common. You're not losing it. In fact, a well-known study from Indiana University found that over 89% of participants reported experiencing phantom phone vibrations, often multiple times per week. Some even felt them several times a day. These weren't just false alarms. These were full sensory events. Vibrations. Rings. Buzzes. Completely fabricated by the brain. But why? It starts with neuroplasticity, your brain's natural ability to rewire itself based on experience. Every time your phone buzzes and you respond, your brain strengthens the neural pathway that says, buzz equals check. Over time, those pathways become so strong that even the expectation of a notification is enough to trigger a physical response. Your brain guesses sensations more often than it perceives them. It's constantly predicting the world, then adjusting those predictions based on feedback. If you're used to feeling a buzz every hour, or every few minutes, your nervous system starts filling in the gaps when the buzz doesn't come. It's like a phantom limb, but for your phone. Unusual, but but actually true. Some people report hearing phantom sounds too, like their custom notification tone echoing faintly while in the shower or in a crowd. These aren't hallucinations in the clinical sense. They're conditioned expectations that manifest as real sensory input. And here's where it gets weirder. The more emotionally dependent you are on notifications, the more likely you are to experience phantom ones. It's not just about usage, it's about attachment. The brain isn't just expecting a ping. It's hoping for one. Craving it. And when it doesn't arrive, it improvises. There remains considerable disagreement among researchers about whether phantom notifications are a harmless quirk or a sign of deeper tech-related anxiety. Some see it as a benign byproduct of frequent phone use. Others view it as an early symptom of digital hypervigilance, a kind of always-on state that keeps the nervous system in low-grade fight or flight. And that's the real issue here. Not the phantom buzz itself, but what it represents. When your brain starts firing up the nervous system over imaginary alerts, it means your baseline has shifted. Your resting state is no longer rest. It's anticipation. Tension. A constant readiness for engagement. Let's step into a familiar scene. You're trying to focus. Maybe reading, or working. And then, you think you felt a buzz. You reach for your phone. Nothing. A small laugh, maybe. Weird. You go back to your task. Minutes later, again. A faint twinge on your leg. You check. Still nothing. You start feeling a little embarrassed, even though no one else noticed. It's like your mind is playing tag with itself. And what's even more strange? Your body reacts the same way to a phantom notification as it does to a real one. Your heart rate increases slightly. Your skin conductivity changes. Your brain begins shifting focus, preparing to respond. All for a message that doesn't exist. This is the neurological equivalent of looking out the window because you thought you saw lightning, only to realize it was nothing, but your body still readies for thunder. Let's breathe here. You're not being ridiculous. Your brain is trying to keep you updated. Helpful, right? But it's helpful in the way an overenthusiastic intern might be, buzzing you constantly just in case something might happen. Your mind is trying to protect your place in the social loop, to keep you in the know. But in doing so, it's creating echoes. And those echoes, those false alerts, chip away at your cognitive stillness. Even when you're off, part of you stays on. Even when nothing's happening, your body prepares for something to happen. That's not rest. That's digital hyper-awareness. You might have already noticed it, a subtle difficulty relaxing, even when the phone is on silent. That weird discomfort in long silences. That compulsion to check even when you know there's nothing new. It's not the phone pulling you anymore, it's your own nervous system. So what can you do? Start by noticing. That's always step one. Each time you reach for your phone after a phantom buzz, pause. Smile, maybe. Take a breath. Gently ask, what did I think I needed just now? Because often, it's not the message. It's the momentary possibility of connection. Of relevance. Of being seen. And here's the good news, the brain can unlearn just as easily as it learns. Those neural pathways? They're flexible. They're waiting for you to retrain them. The less you react to every tingle, the less the false ones will fire. Over time, the intern learns to sit quietly. Some people find it helpful to keep their phone physically farther away, out of reach, out of pockets. Some turn off haptic alerts entirely. Others replace the buzzing with something softer, a tone, a visual cue. The point isn't to reject connection. It's to reclaim your reaction to it. Let's soften that even more. You're not haunted by your phone. You're echoing it. And as you become more aware of that, your nervous system starts to calm. Your thoughts begin to return to you. You begin to recognize that silence isn't empty. It's just yours. And when that silence becomes familiar again, when you no longer twitch at a buzz that isn't there, you'll notice something strange and beautiful. you can begin to hear your own thoughts again. And that rediscovered silence is more powerful than any notification. Which gently leads us to the next question. What happens when you turn them all off? What happens to your mind when the pings stop completely? Let's walk into that quiet together. So the buzzing stops. No more dings, no more flashes. No phantom buzzes playing tricks on your nerves. You've silenced your phone, or maybe even turned it off completely. The world doesn't stop. But inside your head, something shifts. At first, it might not feel like peace. It might feel like withdrawal. That low hum of restlessness. That itch to check. A sense that something is missing. It's a strange kind of quiet, almost suspicious. Like the silence in a movie right before the jump scare. But here's the thing, there is no jump scare. There's just stillness. Welcome to the reawakening of your mind without notifications. Your brain, long trained to pivot at every ping, suddenly has space. That space might feel uncomfortable at first. But stay with it. Because what happens next is subtle and powerful. You start to notice things. Sounds. The texture of your breath. The details in your surroundings. Your own thoughts, emerging in full sentences, not just headline fragments. It's like taking cotton out of your ears after hours of muffled sound. The clarity isn't loud. It's soft. But it's real. One mainstream psychology study from the University of British Columbia found that turning off smartphone notifications for just 1 week significantly reduced participants' levels of stress, improved focus, and increased feelings of presence. Not just while working, but across the board. They reported fewer mood swings. Better sleep. Even improved face-to-face conversations. You might find this surprising. Some participants didn't want to go back. After a few days, the twitch to check began to fade. They realized most of their notifications weren't urgent. Weren't meaningful. Weren't even necessary. Just noise, dressed up like relevance. And here's an odd but true fact. People who take regular, notification sabbaticals, temporary breaks from alerts, report higher levels of life satisfaction. Even if they return to their usual phone habits afterward, the reset gives them a renewed sense of agency. They stop reacting. They start choosing. So what's really happening in your brain when the pings stop? First, your prefrontal cortex, your decision-making and attention center, gets to rest. It's no longer under siege by alerts competing for priority. You stop micro-shifting tasks every few minutes. You begin to think in longer arcs again. Second, your default mode network comes back online. Remember that from earlier? The part of your brain that handles daydreaming, emotional integration, creativity? When notifications disappear, that network isn't being constantly interrupted. It gets to do its job, quietly stitching together meaning, memory, and self-reflection. Third, your limbic system, where emotional regulation lives, begins to downshift. Without the constant rushes of mini dopamine hits, your emotional state stabilizes. Less spiking. More balance. Like finally taking your foot off the accelerator after hours of revving. And perhaps most importantly, your autonomic nervous system begins to calm. That low-level tension, the readiness to respond, the twitchy expectation, starts to ease. Your heart rate drops. Your breathing slows. You feel grounded. Let's step into a moment. It's late. Your phone is off or on Do Not Disturb. There's no buzz waiting. You lie down. You're alone with your thoughts, and at first, they race. They flash back to a message you didn't answer, a post you didn't like, a meme you didn't respond to. But then, without input, they slow. You begin to remember other things. A song. A dream. A childhood smell. You're not pulled from one dopamine hit to the next. You're drifting. Not scrolling. And in that drift, something unexpected happens. You feel full. Not in a productivity sense. Not in a socially validated way. Full in that quiet, internal way, like a room that's been cleaned and filled with sunlight. There's space now. You're not chasing anything. You're being. There remains considerable disagreement about how long it takes to reset your brain from notification overexposure. Some researchers suggest 72 hours. Others claim it's closer to 30 days. But most agree on one thing: even small breaks help. Even an hour a day. Even one phone-free meal. Even 10 minutes of uninterrupted silence. You're not trying to go off-grid. You're just trying to give your brain what it used to have: mental spaciousness. And in that space, you find something strange. Something you might not have expected. You find your own voice again. Not the curated one. Not the version tuned to sound clever or charming or always available. Just you, unfiltered. The thoughts that don't need replies. The emotions that don't need emojis. The presence that doesn't need performance. And once you taste that kind of clarity, you realize, notifications didn't just steal your time. They borrowed your mind. But now you're here, holding it again. And the weight is lighter than you thought. Let's let that linger. Because in the absence of constant alerts, your brain begins to repair. To recenter. To return. Which brings us, gently, to our final step, where we ask, how do you protect this space? How do you keep your brain's real estate from being overrun again? Let's drift there next. So now you're here, in the quiet. Notifications silenced. The buzz dimmed. You've tasted a different rhythm, one where your thoughts are uninterrupted and your nervous system can finally breathe. The question now is, how do you keep it? How do you protect this mental space, this precious cognitive real estate, from being overrun again by a stampede of buzzing alerts, glowing badges, and that ever-present itch to check? The answer isn't to declare war on your phone. It's to build boundaries that make sense for your brain. Thoughtful, flexible, human-sized boundaries. Not rigid detoxes. Not shame-based breaks. Just a reclaiming of control. Let's begin there. You can start small. Notifications aren't all equal. Some demand your attention, but many simply ask for it. One of the simplest changes with the biggest impact. Turn off non-essential notifications. Keep the ones that truly matter, messages from real people, maybe calendar reminders. But app updates? Likes? Someone you may know? Those can go. Your brain doesn't need 10 nudges an hour. It needs space to choose. One mainstream study from Carnegie Mellon showed that people who turned off non-essential notifications for just 24 hours experienced measurable improvements in focus, productivity, and mood. Many of them chose to keep those settings off long-term. Not because they were forced, but because the peace felt better than the ping. Here's a twist you didn't expect. iOS and Android both now include screen time dashboards and focus modes, not because developers suddenly became saints, but because users demanded more control. These tools let you schedule notification silencing, create app limits, and even block access to certain distractions during key times. Use them. Customize them. Turn your device into a tool, not a temptation. Just a quirky detail. Early smartphone designers never imagined notifications would take over our waking lives. In fact, the original iPhone didn't even support push notifications until 2009. Before that, apps just sat quietly, waiting for you to check them. Now, they scream for your attention. But that doesn't mean you have to listen. There remains considerable debate in psychology over whether digital hygiene habits are enough to change behavior, or if deeper, structural shifts are needed. Some researchers argue that turning off notifications is like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Others believe that small habit shifts create ripple effects that can slowly rewire your attention patterns. The truth probably lives in both perspectives. So here's the question that matters more than all the science. What helps you feel more like yourself? Is it having a phone on silent while you eat? Putting it in another room while you sleep? Deleting just one app that drains your joy? Creating a ritual where you pause, hands still, before you check anything? Even one of those can shift the balance. Let's walk into a quiet moment again. You're on a walk. No earbuds. No scrolling. Just you, your breath, the rhythm of your steps. A notification could have broken this, yanked your attention sideways. But you turned them off. You made space. And now, that space feels clean. Spacious. Yours. This is the power of silence. It's not empty. It's full of everything your mind has been trying to say, but couldn't get a word in. You start remembering things. Feeling things. New ideas bubble up. Not because they were lost, but because there was finally room for them to rise. And here's the part most people don't realize. The more time you spend in notification-free space, the more sensitive your brain becomes to the quality of your attention. You start to notice when you're being pulled too thin. You start to crave depth over speed. Presence over performance. You start protecting your focus like you'd protect your peace. Not because you hate your phone, but because you love your mind. You love the way it feels when you can follow a thought to its end. When you can sit in silence and not feel an itch. When you can listen, truly listen, to someone without your brain half watching for a buzz. You begin to realize, notifications were never neutral. They were nudging. Whispering. Rewriting your day in tiny, cumulative ways. And now, you're writing it back. So maybe tonight, you set a quiet rule, no notifications after 9 p.m. Or a soft ritual, airplane mode while you eat. Or a tiny promise, 1 hour a day without checking anything. Not because you have to. Because you can. Because every alert you don't respond to is a moment you keep for yourself. And the more moments you keep, the more your mind begins to remember what it once knew. You are not a device. You are not a feed. You are not an alert waiting to happen. You are a mind. A heart. A full, breathing self. And you were never meant to live on call. Let's slow this down now. Let's give your brain back its quiet. Because from this point, there's nothing more you need to do. Just rest. Just listen. Just be. Now, take one more slow breath. In through the nose, and out. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let your thoughts settle like silt in a clear pond. You've walked through how your brain processes the buzz, the light, the pull. You've seen the machinery behind the moments, the dopamine hits, the emotional loops, the hijacked focus. You've sat with the discomfort and the insight. And now, here you are. Still. A little quieter. The world outside is still spinning. People are still posting, pinging, sharing, replying. But you? You're outside the noise, for now. You've stepped behind the curtain. You've seen the wiring. And maybe, just maybe, you've reclaimed a little space for yourself. Feel your body soften into this quiet. Your breath moving gently in and out. Your thoughts drifting, but without urgency. No alarms. No alerts. Just time. This moment belongs to you. Let your mind exhale. Let the silence in. Let your awareness rest not on a screen, but on the weight of your limbs, the temperature of the air, the subtle rhythm of your being. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together.